California Governor Gavin Newsom came out of his recall election victorious Tuesday evening, allowing the governor to stay in office until at least 2023. 64% of Californians voted no on the recall, compared to 36% of voters who voted yes. That is right now with 68% reporting. So those numbers could change slightly, but looks like Gavin Newsom will probably still end up being the winner in this. Now, Democrats linked the recall effort to Trumpism and the GOP agenda on issues like reproductive rights and voting access. During his victory speech, Newsom addressed this. Let's go ahead and watch.
The former president put out saying this election was rigged. Democracy is not a football. You don't throw it around. It's more like a, antique vase. You could drop it and smash it in a million different pieces. And that's what we're capable of doing if we don't stand up to meet the moment and push back. I said this many, many times on the campaign trail. We may have defeated Trump, but Trumpism is not dead in this country.
Team Rising is here to break it all down. Michael Starr Hopkins, Democratic strategist and senior vice president of Firehouse Strategies, and also Carl Cannon, who is the Washington bureau chief of Real Clear Politics, joins us to discuss. Carl, I'm going to start off with you. You've been reporting on this. Was this a shocker? Did you think this was going to turn out differently? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, there were some polls this summer that showed it tight. One of them even showed Newsom losing the recall, and those polls were not right. And one of the pollsters admitted an error, but they served to wake up the Democrats. And when I say that, I mean wake up the national Democrats, because President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, who's from California, and Barack Obama cut an ad. These people came, entered the fray late and made sure it was a landslide instead of just a solid win. But this makes sense. This is a result that shouldn't surprise people. Newsom didn't have any real scandals. California is, is a solid Democratic state, as Michael knows, solid.
Yeah, and Michael, the numbers are interesting. Turned out that voters actually, by roughly 2-to-1 margins, approved of his handling of the pandemic. You had voters by a 2-to-1 margin saying that that getting the vaccine is a public health responsibility rather than an individual choice. You had, I think, 70 to 80% of people in exit polls saying that mask mandates in schools are good, and of those people, they overwhelmingly went for Newsom. And so, what role do you think the pandemic and his handling of it played in this election? Because if you followed a lot of the outrage at him over his genuine hypocrisy, sending his kids to school while shutting down schools, enforcing, shutting down restaurants while he privately dines at French Laundry, why didn't that resonate in the same way with voters that it did with the media?
Well, I think Larry Elder was the gift that kept giving for Gavin Newsom. He polarized the field. I think normally Democrats wouldn't have turned out in such high numbers, but because of a lot of the statements that Larry Elder made, they overperformed. And I think that this, in terms of COVID response, is a warning for Republicans for midterms. Larry Elder doubled down on a lot of the Trumpism that said, we're never going to shut anything down. People shouldn't mandate vaccines. I think that that's something that could really hurt Republicans come 2022, because when you look at the national numbers, states like Florida, states like Texas may be different, but across the country, we're seeing suburban people really support stronger incentives and stronger mandates.
Yeah, I guess, so Carl, I guess the hope of people like myself, frankly, who very much wanted to see Gavin Newsom lose, not out of any particular affection.
Me too.
For Larry Elder, but because I hate his hypocrisy and his smarminess and I hate all his restrictions. But you had a situation where even if Larry Elder had won, it's not like he was going to have a lot of power or a mandate to do anything or control of the legislature, and you'd still be picking a new governor rather soon. So the message to voters could have been, look, this is just about sending a message to Gavin Newsom. We'll have a true do-over and a Democrat back in charge soon. But that message didn't. So I could have imagined that message working, but it really clearly didn't, right?
Well, you make a point. I have a close friend who's a Democrat in California, and he said if he knew that Kevin Faulconer, the former mayor of San Diego, moderate Republican, if he knew he was going to win the recall, he would vote against Newsom. But once Elder emerged as the top Republican, it was a no-brainer for him. He didn't hesitate. He would have voted for Newsom 3 times if he could. Look, Elder last night said he's going to run next time. Well, that will ensure Gavin Newsom will have a second term. No right-wing Republican, no arch-conservative Republican has won statewide in California in, I don't know, 2 generations. I'm from there. I can't think of the last time it happened. The Republicans who win there statewide are centrist. They're pro-choice. Pete Wilson, Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is what it takes. So once Elder emerged, Biden said he was a Trump clone, and okay, that's fair comment, but it wouldn't have taken that. If Donald Trump had never entered politics, Larry Elder still wasn't going to carry California.
Yeah, Michael, let me ask you, as somebody, I'm in California. I voted to recall Gavin Newsom. I did not vote for Larry Elder. I voted for Kevin Praffith. I always say his name wrong. So, my question for you, Michael, is: do you think that the Democratic Party or Newsom, do you think that they are just going to double down on the pandemic response? Even though, I have to remind everybody that is why Gavin Newsom was recalled. This wasn't about a sexual scandal. This wasn't about corruption and some sort of political, scandal. This was about the pandemic response very specifically. And in a lot of these counties, like Orange County, it's like almost 50-50 on that vote. And so I'm wondering, do you think that there will be any sort of, do you think Gavin Newsom's going to double down and he's going to say, all right, now we're going to do mandates? Because we haven't had vaccine mandates in the state. We've just had really severe lockdowns. Do you think he will double down on that? Or do you think he realizes that had Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, or someone like that run, he might have had the same fate as Gray Davis, who ended up being recalled? Do you think that they're going to learn and say, okay, maybe we need to have a more measured approach? Or do you think they're going to double down and say, no, this is the way because this is how we win?
Well, I think first, the governor has to not have unforced errors. Like Ryan was saying, being at restaurants unmasked while mandating masks all over the state, like things like that can't happen. I'll leave it to the governor to decide whether he's going to do a mask mandate. But at the end of the day, I think this was really about consultants making money. Like $200 million were spent on this campaign, and people who knew Republicans weren't going to win were cashing in. And that's kind of the problem with our system overall.
So establishment Democrats, including Biden, Harris, and Pelosi, showed up for Newsom and had similar messaging as they did in the 2020 presidential election.
I'm going to make this as simple as I can. You either keep Gavin Newsom as your governor or you'll get Donald Trump.
We're not only going to be doing the work of putting Gavin Newsom in exactly where we want him to be, which is as governor of California, to lead as he's been leading, but we are also in this election making a statement about who we are as a nation.
We have a great governor, so great they decided to recall him. And they do that with in a way that makes this recall a recall of our values.
How does that even make sense?
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders even came out. Bernie rallied for Newsom. Ocasio-Cortez did as well. Here's some of that.
At this unprecedented moment in American history, when we're trying to address the crisis of climate change, guarantee health care for all, and pass real immigration reform, the last thing we need is to have some right-wing Republican governor in California.
Carl, how much do you think it mattered that the party nationalized this race in such a partisan way?
Well, look, I think it helped, drive up the vote, but Donald Trump lost California by 30 points. Biden won by 30 points. Newsom's going to win by 30 points. That's where California is now. In 2003, when Gray Davis ran, there were about 5 million registered Republicans. There's still only about 5 million registered Republicans and many more Democrats. The state's gotten younger, more liberal, and less white. And that's the electorate there. I've heard a couple of allusions here to Newsom's mishandling of the pandemic, but that's not really how a majority of California voters see it. He was working. People forget this now with this Larry Elder's emergence, but Newsom was one of the Democrats who worked well with the White House, worked well with Trump, met with him, talked to him, didn't pick fights with him. He tried to steer a middle ground here, and most Californians remembered that. And as far as the French Laundries thing going, that came before there was a restaurant. I don't mean to sound like his flack here, Newsom's flack, but the French Laundry really didn't go against an executive order. And in the end, I just don't think there was enough reason to remove this guy from office. The public seems to like him okay. And there was no Democrat who entered the race the way Cruz Bustamante did in 2003. He was the lieutenant governor. He said, vote for Gray Davis, but if you don't vote for me, well, and there was no Arnold Schwarzenegger. There was only Larry Elder and these other Republicans. I think in the end, this was predictable, and it happened the way you'd expect it would happen if you follow California politics.
I think all politicians should be recalled or in danger of being recalled at any time.
Right. Michael, I do have a question for you on this one. I do want to know, do you think that the Democrats coming into this next, Gavin Newsom is going to start campaigning once again because he's up for election again. So this isn't really over. Do you think the Democrats are going to offer an alternative candidate to the people of California? I think that if there was another Democrat, that many people would vote for that Democrat. I don't think Gavin Newsom's loved. It's just it was either him or Larry Elder,
Yeah, I'm sure someone's going to run against him. But, Gavin Newsom has a political machine. It's going to be really hard to beat him. He's got support up and down the state. So, whoever runs against him, it's going to be an interesting race. But I expect Gavin to be a two-term governor.
That's my problem with the political system, right? The problem is it's not about us people. We don't get to choose, right? The machine chooses for us. And the machine says, well, this is your candidate. So you're either going to have to take this guy, or you're going to have to get this, big old Trump supporter. And it takes our democracy away from us. It's such a problem. But
Speaking of problems, coming up, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin's doubling down on pushing work requirements for parents whose children get a tax credit. Our friend of the show, Brianna Joy Gray, discusses Manchin's proposal when Rising returns.